Not Harder webinar. And thank you again. I'm so excited for you to be here. I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to put this out here right now. Well, a logistical thing first, which is we are recording this, and I know several people are still joining. So if you just joined, we are recording this and we are just now kicking it off. So welcome. And so then the true confession for me to kick this off with is that this is actually, and I just want to say this for a couple of reasons, this is actually the first full-blown webinar that I've actually ever produced myself. And the reason I want to be vulnerable about that at the beginning of this webinar is because probably one of the biggest barriers to podcasting is just starting. People are so concerned about the mic and what their sound like and what their voice is like and whether it's going to be perfect. And I can assure you it's not going to be perfect the first time you do your podcast, and this webinar is probably not going to be perfect either. So we are in this together, and what I mean by that is let's just get started. So I am, if you do not know me, I am Tracy DeForge. I am an internationally recognized podcast expert. I'm also a business development strategist. I have a 25+ year background in broadcast radio and also in business development strategy. I worked with companies like Microsoft, Weight Watchers International, British Airways, just to name a few. But in addition to that, I've also helped thousands of startups launch and worked with hundreds or more podcasters over the last 4 years. And so I am bringing a level of expertise to this webinar that I think you'll be confident in the information that I share. I've been featured on CNN, ABC, NBC, Canadian Television Network, American Express, Open Forum, Radio Inc., and I am a regular contributor and on the editorial board of the Podcast Business Journal. So I kind of know a little bit about podcasting, and I'm excited to share it with you today. In addition to that, I wanted to introduce you to Produce Your Podcast. Produce Your Podcast is a company that I started a little over 4 years ago. I started Produce Your Podcast as out of a true need of my own. And what I mean by that, if there's anybody on the webinar right now who has already launched their podcast, they know already that there are a lot of T's to cross and a lot of I's to dot. So I launched my podcast, Journey to There, and swiftly after that, I realized that I really wanted to be able to do my podcast consistently, but I also, because of my broadcast radio background, was very attentive to the broadcast quality sound, and just realized that being a busy executive myself and running and owning my own business, that there are probably a lot of other people out there in the world that would like to have branded podcasts as part of their marketing strategy, and at the same time really didn't want to deal with the technical issues and all of the details that go along with that. So thus Produce Your Podcast was born. In the webinar today, we're going to talk about some really great and exciting things, and you'll want to stay tuned because by the end of the webinar, there are going to be a couple of things that are happening. One of the things that is happening is that you're going to have a special invitation presented to you to join an educational community that I am launching. It's starting in February, and I'm super excited about this community because I think, it takes a village, and I have been a constant resource for people through the Ask the Experts on social media, through the 3 Big Questions for Tracy on the Podcast Business Journal. And I'm really excited to be able to bring you a community that's going to focus on education, but also have lots of great, special, fun things like production and creative and experts in the industry, private interviews, and just all kinds of fun stuff. So you'll want to stay with us to learn more about that, but you're also going to want to stay with us because we're going to help literally solve your problems of your possible overwhelm and other questions that you might have about launching. We are going to do a Q&A at the end, so please be submitting your questions as we go, and I'll be answering as many of them as I can get to at the end. So 2019 was a breakout year for podcasting. It was the year that saw a lot of venture capital investment. It was let's just say, for example, the company Spotify invested over $350 million in the space. Apple Podcast actually literally took the podcast platform and separated out as its own platform within Apple. And Spotify, as a result of their investment, grew exponentially. And they also have been a really big leader in the podcasting platforms lately. People have gotten advertising sponsors, celebrities have gotten into the space. iHeart Media has actually, as recently as last week, rebranded their company as an audio company versus the general broadcasting radio company that they've been known for. And a lot of that has to do with their dominance in the podcasting space as well. So it was a breakout year for podcasting for a lot of reasons. We are going to talk about in the webinar today the breakout of podcasting and how that impacts you personally as someone who may want to be launching their podcast or may have already launched their podcast. And throughout the podcast, we're going to basically give you an entire roadmap to successful resources and time management tips. And they are literally going to be items that you can take with you after this webinar and implement them, and you'll see immediate results. I'm a big fan of value of your time. I really appreciate that you've invested your time with me over this next 45 minutes or so, and I want to make sure that you get a return on investment of that time. We're going to identify 5 most common podcasting challenges that podcasters face, and we're going to provide tangible takeaway solutions, like I said, that you can implement right away. The first thing we're going to talk about is time takes time, and we all know that time is our biggest asset, so I'm going to give you some pointers on how to manage it effectively when it comes to your podcasting. And we're going to talk about no guest, no show. And really the fundamental principle around the no guest, no show is to give the people that are on the webinar who may be interested in a podcast that is going to be guest driven, and already existing podcasters who may already do interviews and how to manage those more effectively. If you're not currently doing guests with your show, but you think that you might be, this will be great information for you in the event that you're adding guests, and more podcasts, of course, are guest driven. Content starved, we're going to help you with your overwhelm of finding good content, sources to find it, and how to get them. And we're going to talk a little bit about the paralysis of analysis, which if you joined me at the very beginning, you knew that I've had some paralysis of analysis around actually launching a webinar. And it's also probably one of the biggest barriers that podcasters face, not only in terms of just launching, but also in terms of the idea of just like staying with it and getting frozen in fear of taking things to the next level. And what's heavy on a lot of people's mind is cash flow a no-go? We're going to answer that question. You might be surprised. Before we get into some of the very exciting 2019 stats for podcasting, I do want to just say that if you are experiencing, as an existing podcaster, if you are experiencing pod fade, which is an actual term that has been coined, and it was coined back in 2005 by a podcaster who was just completely and totally overwhelmed with their day-to-day and month-to-month and year-to-year tasks around podcasting. And the term itself has absolutely survived and really probably gotten a lot more popular. And I just wanted to, again, identify with you that if it's something that you're coming to this webinar and you're feeling overwhelmed with all your details and you're experiencing the pod fade, then you are going to get some solutions throughout the next slides for sure. But if you've been curious, and again, there are lots of different ranges of people that are showing up today. So if you're just curious about the power of podcasting itself, then you're going to want to see just in this one quick slide how about 197 million people, the exponential growth in 2019 has, you can see from 2006 to 2019, the exponential growth. You're going to, I'm going to point out here to you that today 51% of Americans 12 plus have ever listened to a podcast, with 32% having listened in the past month, 22% in the past week, and that is the largest growth ever since recording podcast data. In addition, podcasting's share of ear has more than doubled in 5 years, increasing from 122% since 2004. And the share of ear equals the share of time spent listening to audio sources. So that's increased from 122%, increasing since 2014. So that's pretty incredible growth right there. And then, although the key demographics grew, much of the increase in podcasting has come from Americans aged 12 to 24. I also want to say, too, that that breaks down into the 12 to 24 increased 30%, but in 25-54, it increased 40%, and 55 plus 30%. So the biggest actual growth percentages has happened in that golden demographic of the 25-54. And the ratio of male to female, it used to be much higher, but the female ratio has increased from 21% to 29%, and that ratio of male to female now has tightened the gap of 54% to 46%. And this last bullet point here, just letting you know too, that 41% of monthly podcast listeners say that they're listening to more podcasts today than compared to a year ago. So we're talking about some significant audience growth just in the past year. And where are people finding podcasts? This is a question that I get very often. How do people discover my podcast? Well, the number one way people find podcasts is by searching the internet. Social media posts come in at a close second. And iTunes, which is now Apple Podcasts, still very familiar as iTunes, is 45%. But watch out for Spotify and Pandora. In the trades just a little over a week ago, it was reported that Spotify has now surpassed Apple in the number of podcasts being downloaded. So that investment that I mentioned to you at the beginning of the presentation obviously paid off for them, because now they have surpassed Apple as a platform for downloading. And 90% are listening at home, and the use of smart speakers are increasing. So that is something to take into consideration too. It's all about the share of ear, all about the growth of audio. So 90% are listening at home, and smart speakers are increasing. And based on all of that, how much of the podcast are they listening to? Which is another big question that I get. How much of the podcast are they listening to? Well, survey says entire podcast 52%, most of the podcast 41%, and 93% of people listen to most or all of the podcasts. So 93% are listening to most or all of the podcasts, which is extremely powerful when you are considering branded podcasts as a marketing tool for your business. So what are the benefits to building an audio brand? I've mentioned audio brands. I've mentioned using branded podcasts for your business. So what can you do in your marketing strategy to implement audio into your brand, and why is that important? there's several factors that come into place that can really integrate and grow your marketing strategy. We talk a lot about the audio brand, and one of our definitions, and when we're talking through marketing and promotions for podcasters, is to ensure that the quality of your podcast, the sound of your podcast, and your images are all such that when they see your business and they hear about your business, or they listen to your podcast and they see your podcast being promoted on social media, that whole audio brand is the same as your overall brand. And the benefits to using audio are very powerful in terms of building trust and in really about engagement. One of the things that I like to talk about when I do my speaking around the country at podcast conferences is that this is a pull medium. It is not a push medium. You are not always pushing this out like other social media posts and things like that. Podcasting is a pull medium because people choose to subscribe, people choose to download. They are literally making a personal choice to invest their time with you. So that level of engagement makes the branded podcasting extremely positive because it is a highly loyal engagement. And that, of course, leads to growth, new customer acquisition, and provides a good conversion rate for online products, for anything that you're doing in terms of conversions to grow your business. So there's so many benefits to integrating podcasting as a marketing tool for your business. But before you can even go there, you have to probably wonder, okay, all of this sounds so great, but why are podcasters struggling? Why are podcasting struggling? Why is there pod fade? Why are people challenged? And why did you show up on this webinar today? And we're going to help you with that overwhelm. So don't you worry about that. Some of the reasons that podcasters are struggling include lack of time, short on funds, difficulty managing guests, being challenged by the whole technology piece, a lack of a marketing strategy, that they can't keep up with the social media. But really, I think the most important thing to take into consideration with podcasting is a lot of people stopped having fun. But don't panic, because we've got you covered with our podcast power sessions designed to reduce your overwhelm, which we are going to be introducing to you as we go throughout the webinar. But this is for you to know if you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed already just by the information that I've presented, or by the fact that you're ready to start and you don't know how, or you've already started and you don't know how to sustain. Just put that panic aside and put that smile on your face, because we are here to help you out with that. So let's talk about the time takes time. I mentioned before that I'm a big believer in getting a return on investment of your time, and I think that goes both ways. So you want to personally feel like you get a return on your time and the time and energy and resources you put into something. And in addition to that, you want to create something that your customer, that your listener, that your subscriber, that your downloader sees that they benefited from investing their time with you, so they're getting a return on investment of their time. But in podcasting successfully, it requires a big time commitment. I don't know about you, but I think that I have actually been each one of these people at some point in time since I launched my podcast over 4.5 years ago. One of the challenges that you can really get hung up on is concepting show ideas. Like, where do we go with getting show ideas? And it's very important that in order to really maximize a successful podcast, that you find and create and generate a good show idea for your show. You want to make sure that you take time to invest in solid show prep. And we're going to go through some of these in more details as we go, but concepting your show idea and then creating solid show prep for that idea, and then managing the production and the guests that go along with the quality of your show, as well as all of the production details. So there are significant things that can be challenging for you. And I think one of the big takeaway from this is that as soon as you have awareness around these things, then you can put parameters into place that can then help you with time management. And we're going to talk through some of the places to generate content from. We're going to tell you a little bit more intensively how to manage your guests and just overall post-production details. And the post-production details, I think, are for me personally, that's one of the areas that I get hung up on a lot. And that is really fundamentally focused on the marketing strategy, which we're going to also talk about as we go. So let's go into one of the struggles that we identified of the no guest, no show. If you are a guest interview based podcaster, so let's face it, it's hard to show up to the mic and record a show if there's not a guest to record it with. And if that's because of the lack of time and preparation, then the person that really loses in that situation is you, and then also your audience, because they really expect the quality of guests that they're used to, but they also expect to have the episodes released consistently. So in order to really kick up your guest management process a notch, here are some suggestions for you. So you want to at first identify a target list of guests. You've done let's say you've created your show idea, your show concept, you're ready, you know what your episodes need to and want to be focused on. And so next you want to identify your target list of guests. And then once you do that, then you want to create a guest tracking sheet, send an invitation email to that target guest. Once they confirm, send them a guest confirmation email with those details. Then you want to actually confirm the guest with a follow-up email, because you're going to want to need to collect their contact information. So likely, I'm just talking from experience here as a podcaster, you don't get a response on this first confirmation request for this contact form. So you're going to want to go back and send up a follow-up email. And then they're going to send you their guest headshot and bio. And just a little bonus tip here, all of this can be handled by integrating a form into your website. We use Gravity Forms, and that makes this process a lot easier. But we do have clients who still collect the forms through Google Docs and other forms that they utilize. But the most simple and efficient way that works for you is the best way that works for you. After you collect their information, you're most definitely going to want to send them a reminder. People get busy and they lose track of time, and you want to be sure that you are sending them a reminder in enough time so that they do not cancel, which is extremely frustrating when that happens, but can be avoided with some good, strong reminder emails. And once the episode is recorded and you release it, then you absolutely want to let the guests know that their episode that they recorded with you is live. And we actually do a lot of the guest release announcement processes when we release episodes for our clients. And in those, we include embed codes for the website, we include links to download, and we also have special templates that we can utilize that include 3 social media posts that people can cut and paste. And it sounds like a lot of work on the front end. However, if you can create templates for each of these emails and have them in Google Drive, it makes it so easy just to go in and update them. And I would say you can create a template for everything in your Google Drive except for this right here, which is the handwritten thank you note. Not just a thank you note email, but a handwritten thank you note. Yes, I do understand that that does take time to sit and write. However, in today's marketing strategies, the handwritten note or the actual piece of mail is the disruptor. So if you can even pre-write your thank you notes in advance and then basically just go in and pop them in the mail. They can be just as simple as thank you for appearing on my show, so you can write them in bulk and then just make sure that you have them scheduled to be mailed when your episode releases. So the great thing about Produce Your Podcast is that we've already done all of this work, right? So we have already created guest email confirmation emails, contact forms, episode release emails, recording reminders. So stay tuned and you'll find out how you are going to be able to access copies of the templates that we've already done, and they can be done for you. And I think you'll really take a big breath of sigh of relief if you can get access to these right now, right? So, content starved. One of the struggles that we talked about was the fact that we have to do solid show prep. It's absolutely key. One of the biggest problems facing most podcasters is creating enough high quality, engaging material to keep the engine of your podcast running on all cylinders. I personally feel like that I read a lot and I'm always studying the trades, but I feel like that getting fresh and new content has to be a priority in my day-to-day business flow. And I have some secret tips that I use that may be familiar to you or may be a big reveal. Let's see. So great content is key. And we know that you can get great content from reading blogs. But did you also know that you can get great information from reading the comments? One of the benefits of reading the comments on people's blogs is that when you are interviewing a guest that may be around a certain topic, if you were to read blogs, let's say, for example, you would read the blog of the person you were interviewing and read comments that were attached to those blogs, then you already have some good questions that you can already ask your guest. So you're learning about them, and at the same time, you're doing your show prep in order to get good questions for them. And looking at websites, absolutely. I mean, you always want to Google your guest. You always want to Google the topic that you're going to be talking about. Even if you're a solo podcaster, websites are a great resource to increase your expertise on a topic. But what about the FAQs? That works the same way that the blog comments work. If you are on your guest's website, or if you are on a website that is your podcast topic, then you can read the frequently asked questions on certain websites, and that will give you a really good idea of what are people looking for, what are they confused by, what do they need clarity on, and that becomes your show prep for that topic. Social media, okay, no brainer, right? We all know that social media is a good place to not only promote yourself, but also to get content. I mean, I've found more amazing and interesting articles on everything, business and otherwise. LinkedIn is a really good go-to resource for me personally, but in addition to that, I also really just love to get content from the other social media platforms as well. But how about if you're reading on the social media, but are you actually connecting on the social media? I think one of the things that has been such a benefit for Produce Your Podcast is when we started actually asking or putting a feature out there called Ask the Experts. And you also see like Ask Me Anythings, Ask the Expert. And when we have people that are willing to put themselves out there and ask questions, then we answer them, and that answer benefits everybody else who's following us, but it also gives us a really good idea, again, of how people are struggling and what can we do as a business to make their life as podcasters easier. So when I was preparing for this webinar, we posted for several weeks on social media, and we got a great response. The question was simply, hey, podcasters, what are you struggling with? And now a good bit of that content, which is my show prep for the webinar, came from us asking those questions and getting those answers. Creating content is one of the most important ways to compete in any industry as the marketing strategies has evolved and changed with digital technology. And I, again, coming from my own perspective, find it to be really overwhelming when I'm trying to run my business and I'm also trying to create content that can generate value for my business. So one trick that I have been doing now for at least maybe 2 years or so or more. I know it. I'm a real big accountability person, so I actually know I started implementing this right at 2 years ago when I was asked to be on the editorial board of Podcast Business Journal, because guess what? I was accountable. It wasn't just about me anymore. So I use my calendar and I set reminders to create content. And I've been doing a great job of it so far this year. Some days are better than others, but if you can set that reminder and have that be the rule and not the exception, then you're going to be really far ahead. I'm hoping that if you are struggling with content development or with getting great content is key, that you realize that the focus on this will really help you develop your audience and will really help you create a more engaging and more detail and in-depth podcast episode where the advantages of that extend beyond measure in terms of positioning you as an expert, helping you get speaker engagements and sell online products. It all comes back to starting out with content being key. Now we're going to talk about the paralysis of analysis because I am a living, breathing, walking version of someone with a lot of experience in paralysis of analysis. So I am going to say that, and then I'm going to quickly come behind that and say, in addition to that, I've also become increasingly successful, and I've started and sold multiple businesses. I currently run Produce Your Podcast. I have launched global networks. I've launched global business models. I've achieved so many things in my professional career that I never thought were possible, and they were possible. And some of them happened more quickly, and some of them happened more slowly. And the things that happened more slowly were because 99% of it was because I got paralyzed and I literally didn't move forward. And I probably have moved forward on like 85 out of 100 ideas. So I guess we better watch out for that other 15. But it is a really, really real deal when you feel like that you're getting stuck. So my advice to you is don't be this guy, because comparison is the thief of joy. But how about being this guy and stay off social media when you're feeling vulnerable? I feel, comparison is the thief of joy regardless. Oh, they're doing better than me. Oh, they've already have 55 million webinars and I'm just doing one. Or they have 1,000 clients, and or they, all the comparison, the better than, the less than, or, her headshot looks great, mine not so much. All of those things are just conversations that we have with ourselves. They're not even real or true in how we're comparing ourselves. If we're allowing ourselves to do that, we're coming up short. So if you're feeling particularly vulnerable, then be mindful of that and stay off social media. And watch the negative self-talk. I think I just gave you like an insight to what it's like to be inside my brain. And some of those conversations that I've had with myself that I just mentioned of being comparison are actually real. Probably had them today, as a matter of fact. But I really tried to watch out on the negative self-talk. And when that happens, I literally take the thought and I reframe it. So if I am thinking to myself, why does this person have this amount of achievement in this area? Then what I need to do is I need to stop and say, hey, wait a minute, that's great for them. And I'm very excited for their success. And I am successful too. And just really remind myself that I'm where I am and my business is where it is because of a lot of hard work and determination. and I'm sure that they have done the same amount of hard work and determination. So just, stop with the negative self-talk, specifically with podcasting. I don't like my voice. I don't think I sound good. I mean, I remember when we used, answering machines, because that dates me for forever, but I mean, nothing was worse than hearing your own voice on an answer machine. But guess what? People didn't stop calling you. So no need for the negative self-talk. And technical challenges. That is real. Technical challenges, I mean, comparison and negative self-talk, those are all things that we can reframe or abstain from, but technical challenges are really, really real. So you want to be able to get support or outsource these technical challenges. And one great way to do that, there are multiple Facebook groups out there that you can join. There are podcast production companies that can help you with outsourcing in different ranges of your budget. And there are communities you can join. And that's why I'm really excited about PODHIVE that I'm going to be launching in February, because it is going to be an educational community that does help with all of the struggles that we're addressing. And these technical challenges, they can really, really hold you up. So don't be afraid to, number one, do not be afraid to ask for help. And that's all fine and well, Tracy. I get it that you want people to outsource, but what if we don't have a cash flow? Is cash flow a no-go? Well, I don't think so. I think that cash flow is, if you having a restraint in your budget, and cash flow is a very real scenario. It's a real scenario when it's positive. It's a real scenario when it's more challenging. But there are definitely things that you can do in regards to podcasting and what to do and some of the things that cash flow impacts. So we're going to take a quick look at what to do when your cash flow says no. Well, if you're being impacted by your time spent on do-it-yourself production and admin items, then the one recommendation that I can make about that, and I just want you to be really clear and listen when I say this, this has nothing to do with making or spending more money. If your time spent on do-it-yourself production and admin items is overwhelming to you, and you impacted your cash flow, then you can create quality, not quantity. That's a really important thing to remember. You actually don't have to release as many episodes. Take a look at the frequency that you're releasing and say to yourself, okay, if I am time strapped and I'm doing this all myself and I'm not in a place to outsource, then what can I do? Well, you can create really good, maybe it's 2 really good quality episodes a month instead of 4, oh my God, I just got this out because I had to get this out. If your marketing strategy for growing your audience is impacting your cash flow, or your cash flow is impacting your ability to market and implement a marketing strategy to grow your audience, then focus on one marketing outlet at a time. This is a really good point, especially if you are using branded podcasts and you're a business owner, or you're doing business using your podcast to grow your business. Because first identify, like, where are your customers? Do your customers live on LinkedIn? Do your customers live on Instagram? Do your customers live on Facebook? Do your customers live on Pinterest, YouTube? So really think about where your customers are. They may be on all of those, but more than likely they are more focused on one medium than they are another medium. And at that point, when you identify that, focus all of your energy, all of your time on that one marketing outlet until you can develop and grow your business to the degree that it allows you to focus on other marketing outlets. So if your enthusiasm and your determination is getting the best of you because you feel like your cash flow says no to everything, that, again, those are real feelings. It's hard to get motivated. It's hard to be so enthusiastic about creating another episode or putting another full-on marketing strategy for every single release and stay determined. And my response to that is stay focused and plan milestones. So the stay focused part happens when, if you're feeling like there's no way I can release, we're at the beginning of the year. So if you're feeling overwhelmed and your enthusiasm is being dampened by thinking like there's no way I can do 52 episodes this year. I don't have the bandwidth or the cash flow. Then stay focused on the ones that you're producing and that you are creating right now, because that, again, if it's quality, not quantity, then that is going to help you elevate your audience and your subscribers, which is going to ultimately grow your revenues, which is ultimately going to help you get to a place where you can outsource. And planning those milestones to be, okay, when I get to X amount of episodes, I'm going to revisit this. It can be cash flow milestones as well. It's like determining I'm going to only allocate this amount to digital marketing for this one platform, but when I get to X level, then I'm going to add a second platform. So if you can just take that overwhelm and break it down into individual steps, you'll be way ahead of the game. Okay, so I don't know about you, but after all of this, I myself am feeling a little overwhelmed, because I just want to be sure that I am giving you as much information as I can during this window of time that we're spending together. If you're feeling like, after we talked about cash flow and great content and creating quality over quantity, and you need an easy button, do not worry. We have an easy button for you. We've got you covered, and I'm going to give you some really fun ways that we can help you with that as we wrap up the webinar in just a few moments. But first, who doesn't love bonus content? Bonus content. These are some time-saving tips for marketing and promotion. Actually, this strategy is in how we work with our clients to help them with their marketing strategies for their podcast. I'm revealing a portion of that on the webinar today. And hopefully they'll give you some insights and tips that you haven't thought of already or can plan for as you grow your podcast. So if you're marketing your podcast, there are several ways that you can repurpose and utilize your content. So one of the things that you want to think about, if you can envision, is that your podcast episode becomes the hub of your marketing strategy. So if you are creating the content, which is what we were talking about, sometimes can be a big struggle, then you want to make sure you optimize that content and put it out there and utilize it as much as possible. Some of the repurposing things that you can do involve transcriptions and newsletters and social media posts and all kinds of things like that. But since we're looking for the easy button and we're trying to avoid the overwhelm, I'm going to give you 3 really strong ways that you can implement this. And this is on a per week basis. So when you record your episode and everything is completed in post-production and you're ready to put it out into the world, don't use your regular cover art that you use for your show that shows up on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the other platforms. Create a specific episode for each tile. So in this case, on the Ask the Experts podcast, this episode has to do with Russ and myself doing the podcast together. So this tile reflects that it's us together. We also, after the podcast is launched and we put it out into social media, we'll extract a quote from the episode itself, and then we will post that as a static graphic in all forms of social media. And in addition to that, we will also take this quote tile and create what's called an audiogram. And the audiograms you can actually, you've probably seen them in social media a lot on Instagram. When you hit play on this, then the entire tile will pulsate and you can hear up on Instagram up to 59 seconds of audio. So this is very, very helpful in having people sample snippets of your podcast. The resource that we use is called wave.co. So that's WAVVE.co. I think I'll confirm that. And Also, Headliner app is another popular one that people utilize. And one thing that we find that we don't see happening enough is people, tooting their own horn about what is what are people saying about your show. So we create review tiles, and they do a couple of things. One thing is that they let people know that other people love your show. So when we get 5-star reviews, we actually take the review itself and put it into the graphic quote tile for the show, and we put that out into social media. So in doing that, it's twofold objective. One is it lets other people know, hey, this must be a good show. And then two, it also encourages people to then go and leave their own review. And this becomes a bit of a circular experience. So every week you would create your episode tile, then you would put it out as a graphic tile created as an audiogram. You don't even have to change the image. You can use the same image. Then you can, if you have a review, you can put a review out. If you don't have a review, but you want to continue your social media momentum, then circle back to another archived episode and bring back one of the archived episodes into your social media rotation, because every day you're getting new fans and followers, and you never know which episode title will be something that will grab a new listener. So don't be afraid to promote your archived episodes. I am okay, I'm telling you, I've been all about this vulnerability since we started. So now we're getting to the place where I am going to fulfill on my promise that you don't have to hit the panic button, that we have the easy button. And what does that look like? And I am always way more comfortable in providing you the information than to ask you to engage with me to provide you the information. But what would a webinar be without a way to continue this conversation in a way that's beneficial for you and exciting for me? Because I love to work with people who are either launching a show or have already launched a show and want to kick it up a notch. So if any of the information that you feel like has been presented on this webinar is something that you want to continue the conversation about, or change the conversation around the way you're developing your podcast, I would invite you to work with me on some podcast power sessions. So there's, if you're a new podcaster, we have a podcast power session for you. And if you are an existing podcaster, we have a podcast audit process for you. So for you people that, for your newbies that are just starting out, one of probably the most important thing I can say is to start out with the right foundation. So if you are interested in working with me to help you get some clarity around next steps for your podcast, then I think that this is probably the best, I don't think, I know, because I'm the one that creates the price structures for our business. This is absolutely one of the most affordable ways to get the level of expertise that I can bring to help you grow your show. And it involves podcast power launch session. And you would first start out, would receive a checklist of thought starters that help you get started. And then we would be reviewing that over an hour and a half consulting that we would hold over video. And then within that, you're going to get tangible tips to set your podcast up for success. You're going to get some creative, customized concepts for monetizing your podcast. And you're going to have a 60-day step-by-step action plan for actually launching your show. So we typically charge starting at $750 for this level of consultation. But because you guys were so amazing and showed up for the webinar today, then you have the opportunity to secure this consulting session for $375, and you'll be able to find out more information about it at produceyourpodcast.com/power sessions. And I'll also obviously be sending out the replay and follow-up email. So if that's something interesting to you, you can reach out to me on that. And if you are one of the experienced podcasters or have already launched your show, it's always great to have somebody do, audits for podcasters are way better than audits from the IRS, because audits for podcasters make sure that you get the best quality show and positive enhancements to make your show be even better. So if you're interested in me working with me, continuing this conversation to see how much that you would like to enhance your show, elevate your show, take your show to the next level, you're going to get a checklist of thought starters. But this checklist will actually be you filling out a checklist and going through a lot of about and seeing how it's working for you, so I can get a really good insight to your workflow process. And then we're going to review your audio brand and I'll be sending you detailed review of your actual podcast content and your presentation and how all of that is working within your marketing strategy. We'll definitely assess your audio quality, and if we need to, make equipment and production recommendations. And we'll optimize your marketing strategy to accelerate your audience and growth and drive engagement, which definitely means that we will help you with any of your questions, or I will be helping you, and we'll bring in any resources that I need to make sure if you want to increase your revenues with advertising and sponsorships and things like that, we're going to set you up in order for your podcast to be so great with the quality and the production and your follow-up resources that's going to make it really easier for you. And I don't like difficult math, so I have priced these the exact same, although I will tell you that normally these start at $750 and are usually range anywhere from $1,800 to $2,500. So I am just so excited about seeing and introducing myself to new people and helping people grow their shows that I would love to work with you. And the price for that, sure enough, $375. And you can find more about that at producerpodcast.com Power Sessions. And just to let you know that the PODHIVE community is going to be launching in February. And if you want to get a special invitation, all you have to do is go online and pop in your email. And when the podcast community goes live, then we will be sending you all the details on that. And you will, because you're on the webinar, you'll have a special invitation and be at the priority list for the waiting list. So that is the end of the webinar for today. I can't thank you enough for hanging in there with me, and I hope you found this to be a very helpful and valuable investment of your time. And if you want to connect with us outside of website resources that I share with you, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram and their website, and I'm going to open it up for any questions, and you're welcome to stay on if you want to stay on for questions, and if not, I will be sending out the replay, so I'm going to answer as many as I can get to, and I really appreciate everyone's time. So I hope you can see me.
Tracy, it's Angie. We can see you still.
Oh, good.
Well, we can see your screen. We can't see you, but we can see you.
Oh, God, I'm really sorry that you can see my screen. Basically, that's what the inside of my brain looks like. Okay, now you should be able to see me.
Yes, now we see you.
Wow. Okay. Well,
and we're just getting a few comments right now. Cynthia Rogan says, thanks, Tracy. Congrats. Thanks for insights. Christina says, so awesome. So many amazing tips. Cynthia says, want to do a podcast launch as a luncheon, live classes and streaming here in Chicago. So she's asking that as a question. I'm assuming she wants to do a podcast launch as a luncheon.
Well, so what that's called is actually called a podcast launch party, and they're becoming increasingly popular. And so they can be done in several different ways. One of the benefits about podcasting is that it is on demand and it's portable. So I don't know that you necessarily want to challenge yourself with the streaming for the actual launch party. Trust me, like I have just launched this, you're going to likely run up against some technical glitches you might not expect. So I would absolutely do a launch party and have a ton of fun with it, and then reach out to streaming platforms as a post party.
Got it. And then I think, Cindy, I'm gonna reply to you personally, but yeah, that was her. That's all the questions we've gotten so far. If anybody else has any questions, just type them into the comments or the chat box there. You'll generally find it at the bottom of your screen, and then I'll read them out to Tracy, and she'll be happy to answer them.
Well, is there any, maybe, Angie, do you, because you know my material pretty well, I'm just going to ask you a question. Is there anything that that I did not cover that you always find that we are engaging with on our team a lot?
Well, actually, we got a question, so I'm
okay, you're off the hook.
So Jennifer asked, what are the numbers one should aim for in terms of downloads per episode? Basically, how do we assess if we are doing well?
I am so glad you asked that question, because the answer is, first and foremost, you are doing well even if your numbers are smaller than you think. And here's why. Because earlier I mentioned podcasting is a pull medium versus a push medium. So when you have an audience of whether it's 350 people, 3,500 people, 35,000 people, 350,000 people, at every tier of audience development, you are reaching a very loyal and engaged audience. So you may only have that 350 people, but if you're a specific niche podcaster and your content is niche specific, then you have a higher opportunity of success in conversions with that level of engaged small audience than you would if you have 35,000 followers on your social media, but none of them are actually really paying attention to what it is that you're saying.
Awesome, thank you. We got another question here from Kristen. She says, do you know of social media marketing companies that specialize in helping podcast growth?
Well, I know a company called Produce Your Podcast that is really highly skilled at growing your podcast through social media. And I think that if that's something that you would like to discuss with me, please feel free to reach out. And then if you're interested in getting a really focused roadmap for that, you're welcome to do one of the podcast power sessions, and we can focus solely on your social media for that.
Awesome. Verlanda has just a comment. She said, hey, Tracy, great info. Thank you for sharing. We are finally ready to jump into podcasting, so this was perfect.
Oh, hey, Verlanda. Congratulations on being a new mom and a new business owner, too. Yay.
And then Kristen's written back another question. She said, I'm talking about the actual physical posting job. Do you do that for the social media marketing?
Yes. So our company we're a full service company. So we actually, when we have a client, we can work with you all the way through from conception to distribution into marketing. And a shorter answer to that is, for example, if you're our client and we release your episodes, we will upload it to your website. We can create blog posts for you based on your transcriptions. We can do your newsletters, release your newsletters, create the content and release them for you the day your episode releases. And we also can do social media, craft the posts, and connect them to your platform and release them on the day that your episode releases. And then if you need additional support in regards to social media, then we can work with you on that as more of a custom project.
Excellent. She says, got it. Thanks. So fantastic. I think that's all the questions that have come in thus far.
Well,
Uh,
you guys are making my life easy. I appreciate that. I mean, my favorite thing is the Q&A because I love to be able to answer your questions. And that being said, before I wrap up, please remember that you can ask us anything on social media, like just to wrap up. So we do Ask the Experts throughout social media. So you can post your question on any of our platforms, and then also, if you have something that you would like for me to answer, if you're a subscriber to the Podcast Business Journal, I have a regular feature called, they named it 3 Big Questions for Tracy. So if you have 3 big questions for Tracy, feel free to send them through social media and we'll get the answers for you. And if that's it, then I think that's it. So
yeah.
I am just, hey, yay, we all made it through Tracy's very first webinar and I loved it and it was fun. So that means that you're definitely going to have a chance to experience more. And I hope you'll consider the podcast power sessions, no matter where you are in your process from launch to taking it to the next level. And I really hope you'll go pop your email into the PodHive sign up invitation on the website so that we can know details about joining the community coming up in February. And thank you so much for your time. And I really appreciate you being here at the webinar today. Have a great rest of your day.